This video covers how to navigate and use the tools on the main map. Once you get in the map, you'll notice that there are two GPS icons at the top, and beside that is a snap icon and a zoom extents. The zoom extents simply zooms to the extents of the project, or all the elements that you've laid out. On the left and the right, you have two pull-down menus. On the right, you have a quick launch with all of the elements that can be placed. And on the left, you have the same thing, only you have a few more tools at the bottom and then a layer control. If I tap the layer control for the poles, you'll notice the poles disappear and so forth with the other items. This is particularly useful if you have objects that are too close together and you're trying to select one and you end up selecting something that is right beside it and you just can't quite get it, so that you would just use that to turn off the layer that you don't want to select temporarily. So we'll begin with a span. You notice that as I get close to a pole, it goes yellow and then green once I get into the snap vicinity. If I don't want that to actually snap to that pole, I would just simply tap the snap at the top. Notice it went from blue to gray, and now that is no longer active feature. Let's put it back on. Usually you would have that on because you want to snap your spans, you want them to be associated with the poles, and that is a key element in AmberPole, is everything is associated so that network continuity is expressed between elements. So there I'm placing a span tool from that pole, and I'm using the imagery in this case because I'm not out in the field. Normally I would use the imagery and my laser distance shots to position items. There's the span. We can go into the span to populate the few fields that are there. Let's say I shot a measurement of 47.9, which is slightly off of the digital. And then you can swipe to accept the values of most of the fields, or you can select from your selection set. In this case, the selection list is not editable because the values affect downstream processes and product output at the end. So you could choose any of those. If you choose a crossing, such as a road or a river, that will affect your drafted profiles and have more actions taken because those are more pertinent. Here's your tree trimming. You can choose a value of 1 through 4, and then there's a help text to tell you what those values represent. They are in the legend of the output products, so they will have them as well. Now let's place a pole. Let's say that we wanted to adjust that span slightly because when we measured it, it was 47.9 and we put a digital length of 48.4, so let's try and match them up. You would just select adjust from either the span being selected or the pole. If the span's selected, notice that the measurement at the top changes as you use these fine-tune placement arrows. So you can place that wherever you want, and then you have the option of either dragging the pole to the end of the span or orphaning it, which you don't really want to do in this case. Or I could have moved the pole instead of the span end to do the same thing. The only difference in this case is that you don't see the span distance changing to know how much it is. So we've already covered what to do with the pole, so we won't bother with that. And the reason it's red is because it has to be fully populated before it is quality controlled and indicated as passed, which in case it would go green. You have other options such as service drops. Specifically, power service drops are usually required in a lot of these types of surveys for permits, because the pole on the main line has to be calculated in. So I can either choose a pole to place a service drop, or let's delete that I can snap it to the line. A lot of the times the service drops are offset on the line because the pole is moved, or it was just inconvenient to run it all the way back to the pole. So let's say that I was in the field and I was placing this service drop. I can see the imagery perfectly, so I know where it goes, but I didn't place it on the span to the right offset. So I measure with my laser. Let's say I got a shot to the pole of 10 meters rather than 15 like we just saw there. So we can enter that value. We can also enter the value of the conductor, or the neutral conductor, which is often required, but you don't have to if you don't need that. That is in your settings to force you to get it if you need it for your survey. So then you would save, and you notice that that offset position changed when I changed the value from 15 to 10. So now when you just tap the screen to deselect objects, then you can add, well, let's add one more span before we add an anchor, and pretend that we have to go across the street to place a pole there. Let's add an anchor. The first thing an anchor wants to do is align itself, and we have a couple of programmed alignments that you can take, except if there are two spans together off of a pole, the anchor will bisect that angle. And you'll notice as you spin your finger around on the map that it wants to stick to the bisecting point or an end point. Those are the most logical positions for an anchor. But in the field, you'll find that it hardly, very often does not line up there. So you would probably want to turn off the snap settings, see it go gray, and then fine tune that to whatever instrument you used to get that exact angle. Or if you don't need it to the actual degree, or you know you have a good eye, you can just not use an instrument and place it by eye. So accept. Now we'll populate an anchor in another video, but now let's say I added a third span to this, and then I tried to place an anchor. It really doesn't know what to do in this situation. There's too many variables. So the only thing it can know is that it could want to go to any of the endpoints. But let's say you were trying to bisect, let's see, this, oh, I have to get out of here to show you. Cancel. Let's say I wanted to bisect that span with this span. I could temporarily disconnect this span, place, and orphan. If I didn't choose orphan, I would have dragged the pole and had to reposition that pole. Then I could place my anchor, bisecting those two lines, and then put the span back. And if I move that around, that bisection of those two spans is kept. Let's move it way up here even. See, it bisects precisely between those two spans because it maintains the association. Put her back now. So let's see what else. We can also delete objects, but it will not delete objects that are partially populated until it prompts you, and then you say yes. For example, poles, I think it prompts you regardless of whether you've populated. And if you delete a pole, the anchors will go with it, and also all of the associated service drops. So some of the other elements you can place, if you're collecting address information, you can place an address, and there are tons of fields here, whether it be commercial or mixed, would allow you to populate actual over potential drops or units fed. And you have comments, establishment name, if it is an establishment, address, residential or commercial, like I said, save. And then you can also put service drops that aren't necessarily power to those addresses, and then change them here to telco or CATV. The next service drop you place will default to the last one that you saved, the type that is. So your next one will also be a CATV drop. Here's another cool feature when placing service drops. If you select another service drop that's already on the line, like I did there, it automatically offsets to the exact same pole offset, because a lot of times in the field you'll have 2 to 4, even more sometimes, drops pinpointed to the same offset position because there used to be a pole there. So we'll cancel that. And that's about all we'll cover for this video. There's more to it, but we should probably break it up. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for your attention.